So you wouldn't believe it, sitting out there, you don't believe it. It's like that. It's really hard to see when you're sitting here. Anyways, I'm not saying move. I didn't mean like that. I'm just explaining that sometimes I don't even know who's up and looking at. Let's see. Okay, so, speaking of seeing. Okay. Nahi prapasyami mama panudyat nahi prapasyami mama panudyat yach chokam uchoshanam indriyanam Yachokam uchoshanam indriyanam Avapya Bhuma Asapatnam Ridham Avapya Bhuma Asapatnam Ridham Rajam Suranam Api Chadipatyam Rajam Suranam Api Chadipatyam Nahi prapasyami mama panudyat Yachokam uchoshanam indriyanam Avapya bhumav asapatnam ridham Rajam suranam apichadipatyam Nahi prapasyami mama panudyat Yachokam uchoshanam indriyanam Avapya bhumav asapatnam ridham Rajam suranam apichadipatyam Is chant anybody wants to?
Nahi prapasyami mahapanudyat Yachokam uchoshanam indriyanam Avapya bhumav asapatnam ridham Rajam suranam apichadipatyam
Rajyam Suranam Apichadipatyam.
Nahi prapashyami mama panudyat.
Nahi prapashyami mama panudyat.
Yachokam uchchosanam indriyanam.
Yachokam uchchosanam indriyanam.
Abhyamupa aspatanam ridam.
Abhyakumam asapatnam hridayam.
Rajyam suranam apichadiyopatyam.
Rajyam suram apichadipatyam.
Anybody else?
Nahi prakasyami mama panudyat.
Nahi prakashyami mama panudyat.
Yakchukam uchhoshanam indriyanam.
Yachokam uchchosanam indriyanam.
Avapi putva ashapatnam radam.
Abhyamupa aspatam ridam.
Rajam Suranam Api Chadipatyam.
Rajyam suranam apichadipatyam. Krishna, you want that?
Prapasyami mama panudyat.
Nahi prakashyami mama panudyat.
Yakchokam uchchosanam indriyanam.
Yachokam uchchosanam indriyanam. Abhyamupa aspatanam ridam. Rajyam suranam apichadipatyam.
Okay, word meanings. Na,
Na,
do not.
do not.
He,
He,
certainly.
certainly.
Prapashyami,
Prakashyami,
I see.
I see.
Mama,
Mama, my.
Apanudyat,
Apanudyat,
can drive away.
can drive away.
Yat,
Yat,
that which.
that which.
Shokam,
Shokam,
lamentation.
lamentation.
Uchoshanam,
Shokam,
drying up.
drying up.
Indriyanam,
Indriyanam,
of the senses.
of the senses.
Avabhya,
Avabhya,
achieving.
achieving.
Umo,
Umo,
on the earth.
on the earth.
Asapatnam,
Astapatnam,
without rival.
without rival.
Ridham,
Ridham,
prosperous.
prosperous.
Rajyam,
Rajyam,
kingdom.
kingdom.
Saranam,
Saranam,
of the demigods.
of the demigods.
Api,
Api,
even.
even.
Cha,
Cha,
also.
also.
Adipatyam,
Adipatyam,
supremacy.
supremacy.
This is Arjuna speaking, and this is translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
So Arjuna is saying, I can find no means to drive away this grief, which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it, even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth, with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven. So please repeat. I can find no means to drive away this grief,
I can find no means to drive away this grief,
which is drying up my senses.
which is drying up my senses.
I will not be able to dispel it,
I will not be able to dispel it,
even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom
even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom
on earth,
on earth,
with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven.
with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven.
So purport. I'm going to read a couple paragraphs out of the purport. Although Arjuna was putting forward so many arguments based on knowledge of the principles of religion and moral codes, it appears that he was unable to solve his real problem without the help of the spiritual master, Lord Sri Krishna. He could understand that his so-called knowledge was useless in driving away his problems, which were drying up his whole existence, and it was impossible for him to solve such perplexities without the help of a spiritual master like Lord Krishna. Academic knowledge, scholarship, high position, etc. are all useless in solving the problems of life. Help can be given only by a spiritual master like Krishna. Therefore, the conclusion is that a spiritual master who is 100% Krishna conscious is the bona fide spiritual master, for he can solve the problems of life. Lord Chaitanya said that one who is master in the science of Krishna consciousness, regardless of his social position, is the real spiritual master. And he's got a couple of quotes proving that. And then, here's the one I wanted to read. Okay, then we're going to read this one. If economic development and material comforts could drive away one's lamentations for family, social, national, or international inebrieties, then Arjuna would not have said that even an unrivaled kingdom on earth, or supremacy like that of the demigods in the heavenly planets, would be unable to drive away his lamentations. He sought, therefore, refuge in Krishna consciousness, and that is the right path for peace and harmony. Economic development or supremacy over the world can be finished at any moment by the cataclysms of material nature. Even elevation into a higher planetary situation, as men are now seeking on the moon planet, can also be finished at one stroke. The Bhagavad Gita confirms this. Kshine punye martya lokam vishanti. When the results of pious activities are finished, one falls down again from the peak of happiness to the lowest status of life. Many politicians of the world have fallen down in that way. Such downfalls only constitute more causes for lamentation. Therefore, if we want to curb lamentation for good, then we have to take shelter of Krishna, as Arjuna is seeking to do. So Arjuna asked Krishna to solve his problem definitely, and that is the way of Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So this verse is one verse after a key turning point when Arjuna actually surrenders. What he says, and so I'll just read it. Now I'm confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I'm your disciple, and the soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. However, it's like putting on the brakes of a car. Just because you apply the brakes doesn't mean you're stopped. You're stopping. So Arjuna is still speaking his worries, which he just spent many pages of the Bhagavad Gita expressing himself and giving, as Prabhupada said, he's all these arguments about principles of religion and moral codes that Arjuna has put forth to Krishna about why he shouldn't fight, because he sees horrible results from this war, and now he's got, as Prabhupada puts it, perplexities. So he wanted to solve it by making his own arguments to Krishna. He wanted to figure it out for himself, and he said, "I will not fight." He said, I'm not going to fight. And then he said, let's see. Then he figured out he couldn't solve it, so he surrendered to Krishna. But still, he says, I can find no means of drying up this grief. So he's still, the car isn't stopped yet. So I thought this was a good verse for talking about how we try to solve our problems and forget that Krishna is helping us, which is the theme that I want to talk about. And Krishna is always there, but we forget. That we think we can't see him, we think he's not there. So we have to solve it ourselves. So, let's see, the next one. Where's the next one? Oh, on top of it, okay. Then having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. Okay, silence means the car stopped, the brakes worked, now he stopped. He said he was still moving, he was still trying to figure it out. Govinda, I shall not fight, then silence. And then Krishna begins to speak, because Arjuna is now ready to listen. But up till that time, he was still in the mode of trying to fight. He forgot who he had in the chariot with him, who was his chariot driver. in chapter 15:15, Krishna says, "For me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness." And that main forgetfulness is forgetfulness of Krishna. Forgetfulness of who Krishna is and who I am and what's my relationship to Krishna. So that's the main thing. Of course, once we forget that, we're in a situation where we forget lots of things. And yeah, that comes from Krishna too. Like, we can't remember our previous birth. We can't remember our previous death. If we could, we'd probably be pretty burdensome to get through this life and try to enjoy. So that kind of forgetfulness happens too. And then all kinds of little things that, I guess, Super Soul is in the heart. He's helping us do every little thing that we do. So he's involved in everything. But the main forgetfulness is forgetfulness of Krishna. And forgetting who he is and what's our relationship. Now, Krishna hasn't forgotten us. So when we don't want to serve Krishna, up in the spiritual world, we get an idea, boy, Krishna is so cool. He's so beautiful, and it's so wonderful to be Krishna that maybe I'd like to be Krishna. And so we start thinking like that instead of thinking like, how can I serve Krishna? And then you can't be Krishna if Krishna is right there. So if we really have the desire to be Krishna, then we have to not be able to see Krishna. So if Krishna is going to fulfill our desires, he has to disappear himself. So he puts us down here in this material world and covers himself so that we can't see him. However, he did not choose to stop serving us. We chose to stop serving him. And there's total free will in the spiritual world. So Krishna has come with us, and he's still our friend, even though we made a different choice. His choice is different from ours. So he's with us there all the time in the heart. But the original forgetfulness is forgetting Krishna. So Krishna has disappeared himself from us. And we can't see him because we didn't want to see him. So Arjuna is his dear friend forever, eternally, is Krishna's dear friend. And he always loves Krishna and tries to serve him. However, in this situation, well, there's already some degree of forgetfulness, because in this life he doesn't remember the other lifetimes and the other personalities he was playing, what other roles he played as friend of Krishna in different incarnations. He doesn't remember that, so there's some forgetfulness already there. But now he's under special kind of forgetfulness right now because Krishna wants to speak Bhagavad Gita. So all of a sudden Arjuna has forgotten all the purpose for, all the reasons for this war. He's forgotten why it's important. He's forgotten who Krishna is. He's just forgot everything. And all of a sudden he's looking at the war and thinking, this is going to be terrible. And so this was a forgetfulness that Krishna gave, so that Arjuna would surrender and Krishna could speak Bhagavad Gita. But meanwhile, in his forgetfulness, he's sort of like panicked, and he's thinking, in chapter 1 and the beginning of chapter 2, Arjuna is coming up with all these arguments to solve the problem and tell Krishna what it has to be. So he's, in other words, in his forgetfulness of who Krishna is, he's thinking he has to do it. He has to figure it out. And that's what we do. We have forgotten Krishna. We try to remember, but we still forget, and we think, I got to do this. I got to figure this out. So that's the topic for today. And I was thinking about it lately because in the morning Bhagavatam class, we have another situation, a similar situation, similar in some ways. So that was arrangement so that the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, could be spoken. We have the great king, the emperor, Parikshit Maharaj, who was a great pure devotee of Krishna, and a well-qualified, trained-up, saintly king. And he happens to be out hunting, because they can do that and go hunt dangerous animals to practice for battle. And so he was out hunting, and it was a long ways. He was like hungry and thirsty, so he stopped at the hermitage of a sage, a great pure devotee sage. And the sage was so deep in meditation that he did not recognize or observe the arrival of the king. The king asked him for water, and the king got no reply. The king felt ignored. The king felt this was rude, and the king had forgetfulness then. If he had remembrance, he would have remembered his own qualities of self-control and austerity. He would have remembered the sage's qualities as a great sage. He would have thought, well, maybe this sage I shouldn't intrude, he's meditating, He would have thought like that, but he had forgetfulness. And this was arranged by Krishna. And there was a dead snake handy right outside the door somewhere, and so he got the notion to put the dead snake on the sage's shoulder, or like a garland, just to say, so there, you think you could ignore me, so treat me rude, I'll treat you rude. So then he left, and the sage's son, whose name is Shringi, was very well trained in Brahminical austerities and powers, but he did not have the maturity, the culture, the experience. So he was still a little boy. And so it was like a little boy with a big gun. He said, I'll show you what I can do. It's like nowadays a little boy said, I can shoot him, I got a big gun, I know how to shoot it, shoot somebody dead, just because he insulted their father. And so he shot a curse by his Brahminical powers. And all of this was arranged so that the Bhagavatam could be spoken. But there's let's see. Oh, I know, I haven't looked here. Okay, this is the verse where you can see his thinking, where the Shringi said when he's about to pronounce the curse, he says, after the departure, he says this to his boyfriends, his old friends, playmates, who are possibly, this is in the Hermitage, or possibly other Brahmana boys. I don't know, some say that maybe they were lower class boys, or maybe they were just other Brahmana boys, but also very young. And you know how boys will play together and show off and stuff. So anyway, Shringi is now about to show them he can pronounce a really big curse. But before that, he says, after the departure of Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead and supreme ruler of everyone, these upstarts have flourished, our protector being gone. Therefore, I myself shall take up this matter and punish them. Just witness my power. He has decided that the king is an upstart, thus revealing himself to be the upstart. He's just a kid, so he's going to punish the king, and he's going to put the king in his place. And so he did. He pronounced the curse that came true. But when that March Pariksha would die in 7 days by the bite of a snake bird, a mystical snake bird. So the news was sent to the king of this curse that when the sage came out of his meditation, he didn't care about the snake. He threw it off and said, "What's wrong?" And his boy was crying then because he was so uncomfortable with what he had done, so he was crying. So the sage was very unhappy, deeply regretted it. He was actually rather horrified that such a good king had been cursed to die by his son. But it happened, and because he had 7 days left, the king wanted to know what should be done when facing death. And so it happened that all the sages gathered, and Shukadeva Goswami came, and they all deferred to him as the one most qualified, and he spoke the Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. And Parikshit Maharaj then was, after 7 days, he was fully satisfied that he could totally meditate on Krishna, and Shukadeva assured him he would not feel anything because he'd be so deep in meditation. Shukadeva Goswami left, and Maharaj Parikshit sat and meditated, came the snake bird in the guise of a Brahmana and bit him. And he died. And he went back to Godhead. So that's how the Srimad Bhagavatam got spoken, by forgetfulness. And actually there was a lot of forgetfulness. And when we forget, especially the main kind of forgetfulness, we're forgetting who Krishna is and who we are in relation to Krishna, then we do things ourselves. We sort of like panic and make a bad decision. And so that was, you can see in the story there was a lot of that. And it's common, we all do it. Well, how many times a day perhaps do we forget, it's not that we have to just sit there and not do anything and Krishna will do everything. It's not really like that. Because we have duty to do. And a lot of the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna telling Arjuna that he should do his duty. But then, just like here, Arjuna was stuck, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do. Well, his duty was obvious, it was right there, but he needed a spiritual master to tell him to do it. So we need a spiritual master to calm our fears and tell us the truth and tell us what our duty is. The duty may be material duty or spiritual duty. Even material duty, if it's done correctly, can be done as a service to Krishna. And of course, a spiritual duty, such as chanting our japa or studying the books, or doing some deity service, whatever our spiritual duty might be to help the movement go along or to serve the deities. And so we have different kinds of duties. If we guess what our duty is, we might be wrong. So that we have the spiritual master tell us. And at least and especially Srila Prabhupada is telling us in his books. He's giving us all the answers. And our immediate spiritual masters, maybe our Diksha Guru or who initiates us, or our Shiksha Guru who gives guidance, is supposed to be giving guidance according to Prabhupada's teachings. That's the idea. So they may help in an immediate way. You may not see your own way, but somebody a little older and wiser who knows Prabhupada's books can guide you. So, but in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is telling Arjuna so many ways that Krishna has not gone. Because remember that Shringi, the little boy, thought Krishna had departed. So, Krishna is gone, that's our protector, so now I'm going to protect, I'll do it. And because he thought Krishna was gone. Krishna was only gone from sight. Krishna's never gone. Krishna's always with us. So the whole Bhagavad Gita has so many ways he's telling. So I marked some places here to read. So, let's see. Okay, here's a nice one. There's a science a science involved in understanding action activities. So this is chapter 3, text 27. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. And who's running the three modes of material nature? And whose energy are they? Krishna's. Krishna is in charge of the three modes of material nature, and Krishna is guiding them. So we think we're the doer. Now let's see, what's the next one? This is one. I think I wanted to read more after this. I looked at all these. Okay. Okay, here's another statement about the presence of Krishna as the super soul. Yet in this body there is another. This is 13:23. In this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the super soul. So always present. You can't see, and most people have no idea that he's there. But he's the overseer, he's the permitter, he's a transcendental enjoyer, because he's not suffering like we are. He's in his own realm of aloofness and his own happiness within himself. Yeah, we can torture him by making the body suffer unnecessarily and by doing stupid things. So we have to respect the body as a temple of the Lord and behave accordingly. But anyway, this is one of the many ways that Krishna is telling Arjuna that he hasn't left, that he's right there. So Krishna is not gone. We can count on Krishna to help us. We're not on our own. The living entities, this is 15:7. The living entities in this conditional world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind, trying to figure out what to do, right? How to enjoy. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped around the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. For example, an animal like a dog has really good sense of smell and pretty good hearing, but eyes, not such a big thing. Whereas we are more, eyes are real important, and hearing and smell are not really strong clues of what we hear as compared to eyes. So different senses. Let's see. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. The one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. What sort of body he enjoys. What is this body, anyways? It's just made of Krishna's energy. It's not me. It's made of Krishna's energy. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly. But those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to. And here's where Krishna tells more about how he's here. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me. Where would we, without the sun, where would we be? How dark would it be? It would be horrible. And yet from the sun we get not only light to see and light to learn things and know what's going on, but also light to feel happy and light to give us an idea that there's God. Because the primitive religion is to worship the sun god. A lot of primitive people have a worship of the sun god. Well, everything comes from the sun in a sense. That we experience whatever we're able to do, whatever we're able to see, whatever grows, everything depends on the sun. So that's a really big deal. The splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. And, let's see, I enter each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the 4 kinds of foodstuff. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So that's a beautiful poetic way of saying how Krishna is everywhere. He's in the sun, he's in the atoms, he's in the heart, he's in the cells of the body, he's in all other living entities in their hearts, etc., etc. He's everywhere, he's here. Krishna says in chapter 7, everything is, how does he put it, dependent on me as pearls are strung on a thread. So when you string pearls, you can't see the thread. The pearls cover up the thread. But you know the thread is there, because that's why the pearls aren't rolling everywhere all over the floor. So the fact that everything stays together in an orderly fashion in this material world, and we're not flying around in space with dust particles and loose planets bumping into each other out in space, and Krishna is holding it together, like pearls are strung on a thread. The thread is holding it together. So he's holding the whole thing together. So, and he's in the heart. When somebody starts doing devotional service, Krishna within the heart shines the lamp of knowledge to dispel the darkness of ignorance. That's said in 10:11. So he helps us when we start trying to read the books, Prabhupada's books, we start hearing about the philosophy, practicing some kind of devotional service. It doesn't remain abstract. It doesn't remain just intellectual. It becomes real. And that's Krishna in the heart, making this into from intellectual knowledge into realized knowledge. So then we start to see all of the world according to this knowledge. It's no longer just sentences in a book or something. It becomes real. And that's Super Soul too. So these impulses that we have, that Shringi had, that Arjuna had, that where's Krishna, what, this is chaos, this is crazy, wow, I've got to decide what to do, and then make a bad decision. We can slow down, we can listen to the spiritual master and those who represent him, and do our duty and get some philosophy about it and trust that it's under control, which is my point here. Now, the Shingi was supposed to do that because the Bhagavatam was supposed to be spoken. Arjuna was supposed to forget because the Bhagavad Gita was supposed to be spoken. Krishna wanted this. We are in forgetfulness because Krishna wanted to allow us to do our free will, and he also wants us to come back. So if we never had this chance, maybe we'd never want to serve him again because we just remain frustrated. So this gives us the opportunity to get it out of our system and learn some lessons and desire to come back. So it's all a plan. It's about forgetfulness, and it's about coming back and surrendering to Krishna and trusting him. I guess that's my theme for the day. So any discussion or questions? Comments, questions? Yes, Krishna.
When you're mentioning the spiritual master, I've been reading the back of Godhead, the BTG, because this is named Suresh for is supposed to come in, and he has a lot of nice ways with Prabhupada giving examples, and he gave the example, and that back to Godhead magazine, which is going to be coming in the seminar. The Prabhupada gave the example of a postman. The postman, he just delivers the mail. He doesn't add to it. He doesn't subtract it. He doesn't change it. He takes it as it is and delivers the mail. In the same way with the spiritual master, he doesn't change anything. He speaks Krishna as like in discipleship section like that. He doesn't change it, add it, or subtract it. That's the qualification of I was reading how the spiritual master. It's so wonderful. Our Prabhupada's always giving these wonderful examples, especially to help
Yeah, you can just imagine how if you got a letter and the postmaster had written some interpretations in it for you. Okay, which one was the original? He's using the same handwriting. So, yes.
I mean, we've been studying this every morning. I have a question about this boy Srini that we're talking about. How old was he? Was he younger than 10 or is he a teenager? Does it mention anywhere how old he was?
Anybody know? I picture him like about 10. Is there a reason that I picture that?
Yeah.
I pictured him as teenager because I think he was testing that curse.
But he was crying.
Because he felt bad right after he did it.
He was crying loudly. Teenagers usually don't go. No, he was crying loudly.
But it's not mentioned anywhere how old is he.
I don't think, for some reason I picture him 10, but I don't remember what it says
I
there.
also want to know what is the Muni's name. Is that anywhere mentioned?
Shamika.
Shamika Rishi.
Yeah.
And how old is Maharaj Parikshit would have been then?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know how long it was after he was. It was long enough after he was crowned the emperor that he had made a world tour.
It was in the early 50s, is it?
He had made a world tour and of his kingdom, and heard all kinds of glories about his grandfather and the uncle of the Pandavas, and he had that encounter with Kali, torturing the cow and the bull. So Dharma and Bhumi. So he had that encounter. So enough time for that to happen, and they didn't just fly an airplane. So sometime, it must have been a few years at least after he was crowned emperor. But I don't know. He had a son, Janamejaya, that he was ready to be crowned emperor in his place when he knew he was going to die. I don't think he was an old man yet.
But the son was old enough to take the job.
In those days, the ages changed gradually from one to another. So the length of years lived in the previous age was like 1,000, and now it's like 100. And before 10,000, then 100,000. But it changed gradually. So the number of years old he was might not have been something the way we calculate it, because maybe, he had a lot longer lifespan. So that's complicated too. Does that make sense? Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody whose hand I'm not seeing because of the glare?
The Lord has six opulences. And of them, the strongest one is the renunciation, because he can give up all the other 5. And so he has given us that ability as well. We have our independence that comes from that characteristic of the Lord's. And so he doesn't want to restrict our independence. So, like in this example, he's giving Arjuna answers to his questions, but he's not forcing him to accept. He's giving him the option to consider.
Even at the end, after all, the 11th chapter, all that universal form and the emotional effect on Arjuna and how he's glorifying the Lord and everything, and then how the crescendo in the 18th chapter leading to the final, surrender unto me. It's like a crescendo of teaching and realization, and still, I said, well, do as you wish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes.
For those who might be interested in studying that exchange of conversation about Sringi, that was first canto, 18th chapter, Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
And Astika called to my attention today's date is the appearance date of a Vaishnava saint.
Lochana Das Thakur.
Yeah, he was famous for writing a very famous and great book that is not one of the ones Prabhupada translated, so I was reading about him today, but this is too long, I can't say that. He was in Lord Chaitanya's time. He was a disciple of Narahari Das Thakur, and I remember that much. And he wrote this book, and he was closely connected with the other devotees that came right after Lord Chaitanya. And I'm not able to talk more, even though I read it. I'm not able to say more.
He was born 35 years after Lord Chaitanya appeared. So he was younger. Yeah.
So, yeah, he was much younger. Lord Chaitanya was then 35 years old, and Lord Chaitanya stayed 25 and 50 years. What, 25 and 25? 24 and 24, 48 years. So, okay. Anything else? All goes to Srimad Bhagavad Gita, all goes to Srila Prabhupada, all goes to Prasadam.
Yeah.